Alrighty, here we go. Hey everybody, Steve here, the retired hobby tech guy, also an American expat here in Korea. And today, as you can see, rain, go away. Flooding damage here in Korea. We're getting hammered with the precipitation, the rain, the water that falls from the sky is kind of massive. Now, I've spent a number of years in Korea, first in the military. A lot of years in the military doing grunt army stuff and being out in the elements and seeing rains and floods. When I was stationed up north, matter of fact, by the DMZ in Camp Garyon or Camp Pelham, depending on how old you are, and the military buff, if you know that, give yourself a thumbs up. But there was we experienced a flood up there, and we actually had to get evacuated, and it was like a once in a 70-year flood. When we lived off post and there was so much rain and we got evacuated, and then when we came back, the water marks on the wall were about 4 feet high in the place that we're staying. So yeah, it was a massive flooding back then. But now this is kind of crazy because it looks like we're going to get even more rain as things go on. And we're getting a lot of rain here in Korea. It's causing a lot of problems. The airport has canceled a bunch of flights, farms, roads, tunnels, collapses of overpasses where, train schedules have been delayed because of the rain, and all kinds of crazy stuff that is going on. So I wanted to kind of go over some of this stuff a little bit and show you what's going on and how this is unprecedented. The last big major flood that I was in was, I think it was like the 90s. And it was about the 90s. And that's when I was up north, and it was like once every 70 years they got a ton of rain. Well, now it's once in a century. It is crazy. So let's take a look at the Korean Times. South Chungcheong province reels from once in a century rainfall. And we got some picture here. Dude's just kind of chilling out on the top of his car, low spots. Downpour through Saturday. There was landslides. Farms, homes were flooded, forcing more than 1,300 residents to evacuate. Had 400 millimeters of rain in just over a half day, including 114.9 millimeters in a single hour. So for those of you who don't know, 100 millimeters is 4 inches. So 4 inches in 1 hour. That is crazy. And the problem is with that much rain in a short amount of time, the ground isn't going to soak up that water. It's just going to hit, boom, and there it is, and then you end up having flash flooding. There's some places that have gotten more rain in 1 hour than they have in previous years during the entire monsoon season. That was reported on the Korean news that my wife was watching. It's just like a once in a century event. So we're definitely seeing a lot of rainfall. I know a bunch of people say, oh, it's climate change, but you know what? I think it's just the normal pattern. Just like you get spring, summer, winter, and fall, you're going to have the same thing. You're going to have times when it's really wet. You're going to have times when it's really dry, it's really cold, really warm. Just kind of go through the cycle of life thing. So other regions of the country are forecast to receive even more rainfall through Friday, and we'll take a look at that. Seosan saw 438 millimeters of rain early Thursday between midnight and 10 a.m., which is the largest daily amount since January of 1968. I told you this was huge. The previous record was 274.5 milliliters in 1999. Crazy stuff. The city received 115 millimeters in 1 hour starting from 1:46 a.m. And streams, rivers, all of these places, we see farms and landslides happening. You'll have mountain areas, and then you'll have a farm built into the side of the mountain, then the mountain just slides down. And kind of some crazy stuff. There was a couple of people that were found dead, unfortunately. In Osan, Gyeonggi province, which is real close to here. Osan is about I don't know, 35 minutes. And when a retaining wall collapsed near a road, hours later at 4 a.m., another man was found dead in his car on a flooded road in Seosan. Around noon, a man was found dead in his basement of his home in Dangjin, Chungcheong province. At about 11:30 a.m., emergency responders discovered another man in cardiac arrest, but efforts to resuscitate him were unsuccessful. So yeah, flash flooding is definitely a thing, and there was a big write-up a long time ago. I remember an article that was talking about how the flooding, and with housing in Korea, it was kind of interesting because it ends up that you have basements and you'll have a basement window, so it's about above your head height, I guess you could say, and there's no drains. And there was actually flooding in Seoul and other places where the torrential downpour was so bad that it flooded into these areas and people couldn't get out, and they drowned in these basement rooms that they were renting out, or basement unit areas, I guess. So there's a lot of stuff happened in the past about that. So yeah, always kind of hesitant about water because we've experienced a lot of flooding in our life in different places, Korea and abroad. So yeah, another 86 millimeters. Authorities received 136 reports of flooding, including roads and buildings. Major transportation routes were disrupted. Landslides cutting off highways, the core rail, the rail system that goes down from Seoul to Busan, and even close to where we live, close to Pyeongtaek. Rain also halted 34 passenger ferry routes involving 39 vessels, Mokpo and Hongdo route. We've actually been to Mokpo, so it was, kind of crazy. And you can see here 21 national parks and 69 riverside parking lots were closed off for safety. So here we get a view of the roads and the soil from the flooding and just massive amounts of rain. And the water will find a way. It'll just go. And unfortunately, when you're set up and you're in a valley, all this rain is going to take its toll. And so, just absolutely crazy. So we're going through some big rain here in Korea. If you got any comments, put it in the comments section. I can actually read the comments. So if you want to get in on the discussion or ask questions or, share your experiences, come on in. 667 schools nationwide ended up closed. Let's go back because I was reading and showing you. Boom, there it is. Mountainsides, and in the valley, the water's going to go where the valley is. So it ends up, it's actually kind of crazy. So it ends up there's 667 schools nationwide closed or shortened. And Ferrithus said, good morning. Good morning. Good to have you on. We're talking about all the massive rain that we got going on here in Korea. Some places have actually got enough rain in 1 hour that they got more rain than the previous year monsoon season. Yeah, and they're calling it a once a century in some of these places, a once a century rain and floods and all that stuff. Evacuation orders for 1382 residents. Gyeonggi, or southern Gyeonggi-do, is kind of like where we're at in this area. Man, look at that. That is crazy. I mean, just look at all the water on there and the flooding. And it's just massive amounts, even in just 1 hour. But even over the course it continues to rain, all that water is going to go somewhere. And the problem with this, besides the damage to housing and roads and infrastructure and things like that, is all of this here is rice paddies. I think that's the actual river is right in here, but all around here you can see those are rice paddies. So all of those, that's all done. So there's going to be some economic kickback or effects on this as well, which is absolutely crazy. So and we're going to continue to have more rain continue on. But Matt Drell says, I know this is unrelated, but I saw a notification for you pop up. I bought the Yopai enclosure thanks to you, and your videos are more helpful than the tiny slips of instruction they included. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that, Matt. tent is really good. That definitely helps. I've upgraded from that to a full size permanent cabinet, but I still have the Yopai tent on there, and it's great. It does a great job. So yeah, it is absolutely crazy. And yes, absolutely, the flooding is insane for what we're seeing here in Korea. It's probably the worst I've seen, and I've got a total time in Korea of about 15 years altogether. So yeah. Pat Starr says, "Hey there, I'm visiting Jeju and not much rain down there. Maybe we should join you, but." Train service was discontinued for a while. I don't know. I haven't got any messages yet to find out to see if that's been restored from Seoul to Pyeongtaek, GJ station or whatever, to go down to Busan. So, or is it the KTA? I can't remember. But yeah, eventually we're going to get down to Jeju-do. We've seen a lot of updates. The last time we were in Jeju-do was like, what was that? That was 20, 30 years ago, something like that. I think we'd married, we had our kid, and we're kind of traipsing around Jeju-do, so it wasn't really built up as much as it is now. Apparently in the last 20, 30 years or whatever, massive improvements made to Jeju-do. So we're going to look at possibly going down there, of course, after the rainy season. So yeah, fun stuff. Hopefully, you don't experience a lot of rain, and you can enjoy your little vacation that you got there, Pat. Cool. So yeah, big forecast going on the weather. And matter of fact, let's take a look at this. Here is the weather that we're looking at. Gyeonggi-do, which is like the Pyeongtaek area. What we end up seeing is 95% of rain. Today, obviously, I think we're actually getting a little bit of rain as we speak. And then you can see throughout the hourly forecast, yeah, we're pretty much going to hit with rain. The only cool thing about it is it cools it down, but the humidity is pretty much the same. So the last couple of days we've had low temperatures, but the humidity and the temperatures have been basically the same. So Saturday rain, Sunday rain, Monday rain, Tuesday rain, Wednesday rain, but it'll minimize, and we start seeing some higher temperatures pop in. And then the next week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we're getting back into the 90s, and yeah, that's going to be miserable. So we're coming into some crazy stuff. So yeah, participation is going to get wild. So, but then on the other side, humidity is 93%. So you start throwing some humidity and some heat, and I just hate life. And actually, we're here in Pyeongtaek. So, yeah, still looks like Tuesday, bunch of rain. Yeah, fun stuff. Yeah, it is what it is. Another thing we're going to end up taking a look at is to show you some of the rain that's going on is this little video here. Of course, that doesn't look too bad, does it? Southern Gyeonggi Province. Doesn't look too bad, does it? But then you start getting into this. Yeah, it's starting to get crazy. When you get 4 inches of rain, over 4 inches of rain in 1 hour, the highest hourly rainfall recorded since 1968. Yeah, it's very problematic. 98 millimeters of rain in 1 hour, new record for the month in Hongsong. But it's not cold. Streams, river walks up in Seoul were inundated. It ends up, yeah, that kind of looks like the area that we're in. Residents evacuated, schools closed. Oh man, that's crazy. 10-meter high, 180-ton retaining wall collapsed on an overpass bearing a passenger car. Yeah, we had some deaths, unfortunately, so thoughts and prayers for the family. He was rescued, but he died because of the injuries. Yeah, it's just crazy. The core rails suspended on major lines from Seoul to Busan. Yeah, so there's core rail and there's SRT. Yeah, look at that. That is just crazy. So yeah, it's like a once in a century type of rainfall. Um, and yeah, you can't be in Korea without an umbrella. I used to be an anti-umbrella guy, mainly because of my time in the military. But yeah, you definitely take an umbrella with you these days. More rain is expected. Yeah, it is gonna be crazy. So yeah, a lot of interesting stuff going on in regards to the rain. Thankfully, we live in a place where if we get a lot of rain, at least locally, we're kind of up on the high ground. So our apartment complex that we're in is only like 8 or 9 years old, and it's not in a low area. So even though there's been a massive amount of rain and we have underground parking, we don't get that. And some places in Seoul and other cities, they'll get massive amounts of rain and you'll get flooding actually in the underground parking. There's previous years where, man, there was like underground parking where it filled up the whole thing. And, people died and things like that. Just absolutely crazy. So when we were looking for apartments and places to live, of course, because we experienced floods before, not only in Korea, but in other places, uh, yeah, we learned to get on the high ground and kind of look, let's see, where would the water go if there was a ton of water? It was absolutely crazy. Yeah. Verithus got it right. Tip, if in Korea, get a place on the hill. Absolutely true. Um, yeah, definitely go for the high ground. But even then, the maybe on top of the hill, that would probably be better because there's a lot of places where it ends up that people that were up on a hill on the side of a mountain or a side of a hill and then had all that flooding and it just retaining walls just blew through those like butter. And yeah, some of the other pictures and videos and the stuff that we've seen on the news on TV has just been absolutely crazy. So yeah, it's been a worse year for rain this year, and we're going to get a lot more. So, and then after that, we're going to get into, because what is this, July, right? When you're retired, you lose track of time. So yeah, it's 18 July, 7:23 a.m. here in the morning in Korea. But yeah, coming up, we're over halfway through the month, and towards this end of this month, we're going to start getting some really hot weather within the next week or so. And then after that, we're going to get into August, and August is supposed to be one of the hotter years this year, according to the Korean news and like the Farmer Almanac type of thing that they have over here. It says this August is going to be hot, humid, and really, really rough. So, unfortunately, prior to the rains that we ended up having now, we had a lot of heat, a lot of humidity, and we had a lot of seniors. And even some delivery people that deliver packages and do all that stuff didn't stay hydrated, and they ended up dying from like heat stroke, heat related injuries, and cardiac arrest because they just couldn't cool down. There's still a lot of people, especially elders and seniors, people who have farms or used to have farms, or they live in older apartments, they're on limited income, the Korean pension system, kind of like Social Security. These people live, but a lot of these places don't have air conditioning, so they might just have a fan, and unfortunately, the heat is just too much, and seniors just don't drink enough water to begin with. I know I drink a lot of coffee. I should drink more water. So yeah, that's one thing that need to be careful of, no matter where you are, is to always stay hydrated. The worst thing that you can do is be dehydrated, then go through heat and humidity, and it just sucks the life out of you, and it's absolutely crazy. So yeah, that's what we got going on. For those of you who didn't know, I ended up getting featured in, let's see, in a business article, Business Insider. If I can end up finding that, where was that? Which was really cool. I thought it was cool anyway. Here it is. I think I've got it. I'll give you a look-see, and we'll take a look at that if it pops up. And read more for free. It's a Business Insider. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Blah, 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 blah. Yes, continue, sign in, free service, advertising, blah, 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 blah. Skip this offer. So let's jump to that and I kind of show you what we got going on. This is kind of cool. Amanda Go ended up contacting me, and through my videos here on YouTube, she contacted me. Of course, I have my email address, and the next thing you know, she's like, "Hey, I want to do this interview," and blah blah blah. I'm from Business Insider, and I'm like, "Yeah, right," because I do get crazy people with all kinds of crazy things. You wouldn't believe the stuff that gets sent to me at times, and it just makes you scratch your head. So anyway, it ends up that chatted with her on via email, and then we did an interview over Skype or Zoom or something like that. And yeah, it ends up that we did retirement and talked about retiring overseas, retiring early, and I just thought it was pretty cool to be featured in Business Insider. And she's done a number of other articles. We talked about the cost of living in South Korea and how it's half of what we're paying in the United States. Talked about apartment hunting, and a little shot of our apartment there. Kind of sparse. We got a new couch, by the way. So that's an old couch. We got a bigger, more comfortable, fluffy couch. Something that you could fall asleep on, which we've done a number of times. So close to a military base. Talked about buying our 4-bedroom, 2-bath apartment. There's a little shot of our kitchen with the new kitchen cabinets resurfaced and everything. So that next step is going to be the new refrigerator. So eventually we're going to get a new one of those. And yeah, it just ends up, Department of Defense report published in 2023 said there's more than 900 U.S. Army retirees living in South Korea. So yeah, kind of interesting, kind of wild to think that I'm one of the 900 or so. But since 2023, and it's 2025 now, I personally know like 3 or 4 couples that came and retired in Korea because they saw, my videos on us selling everything and coming to Korea, and that kind of encouraged them and said, hey, it is possible to retire in Korea. And they were in the same situation as us. It ends up there. The husband had the wife with a Korean spouse, who had Korean ancestry. Excuse me, like my wife, she was a Korean citizen, born and raised. And then we got married. We've been together like 35 years now. And then she became a U.S. citizen. Then we found out we could come to Korea on she has an F4 visa, I have an F1 visa, and boom, that allowed us to retire here in Korea. Of course, we got the funds to do it and all that stuff. A regular retirement visa in Korea requires something like $500,000, and you have to invest in a Korean business or whatever. So it's not really retirement friendly like Thailand or Costa Rica or Portugal or Philippines or things like that. That is like way out of our price range. But nothing really clicked until we found out that we could get the F1 and F4 visas. So yeah, when we found that out, and it was either like stay in the States and work until about 70 and then retire. And the reason I wouldn't be able to retire in the United States is because the expenses kept going up and up and up. Property tax went up like $100 every single year without fail, minimum. So you start looking and say, okay, well, I'm 54, 53, 54 years old, and you start saying, okay, well, every year it's going to go up $100, and right now it's like $2,400. You start doing the math, and then the previous years for water, gas, electric, all of the expenses that you have, vehicle registration, insurance, and you look at all the average increases on everything, and it was like, yeah, it's no wonder that a lot of people don't end up retiring. And, there's like one survey, I know I've said it before, but 75% of people that are eligible to retire don't retire because they can't make ends meet. So now with that being said, there's a lot of people that just didn't plan, they didn't save, for retirement. They didn't invest anything. So you need to take that into consideration. If you don't put in the time, you're not gonna be able to retire. Um, but yeah, it's just absolutely crazy. And like I said, my wife worked with a nonprofit agency that provided assisted living care for seniors who are on Social Security, on the low end of the Social Security. And yeah, a lot of people just, unfortunately, they couldn't afford toilet paper. They had, how do you stretch toilet paper? Well, you go to fast food restaurants and you take toilet paper, just a lot of sad stories. And unfortunately, as much as politicians say that they care about seniors on Social Security, oh, Social Security, our seniors are going to bear the brunt of this, vote for me and I'll fix it. And then they never do. The cost of living increases pale in comparison. It doesn't even meet the requirements of the minimum wage. So cost of living, let's say you get a 2% cost of living increase, but even with that increase, you're still not even making minimum wage. So how are seniors going to make it? It is absolutely crazy. Ferrithus says, toilet paper, get a bidet. Is that kind of like the modern, let them eat cake, Oh, they don't have food, let them eat cake. I don't know. Just kind of crazy stuff, yeah. But there's people that have resorted to, doing the old school, washing with water to, instead of toilet paper. So yeah, it's out there. People are actually doing that, and when you have people going to fast food restaurants to get napkins, to get toilet paper, to get condiments, things of that nature. Try to get as much free stuff as possible just to try to make it through the month. That is absolutely crazy. Ferrithus says, yeah, it's been insane over here. I got a pay bump from a raise and it all got eaten up by inflation. I know. It's absolutely crazy. But then on the other hand, how far do you go with the cost of living increases? And the more cost of living increases, you're going to need and incur more taxes. But we're getting taxed a lot already in the United States. So maybe only if there was a way that you could put tariffs to fund Social Security and cost of living increases. I don't know. That would be an idea. I've been saying that for decades. So to take care of our seniors, that is definitely something. And of course, then the whole thing with, once you get Social Security, you shouldn't be taxed on it to begin with. Ferrithus says, I've definitely gotten very creative over the last few years, dropping my fixed expenses as much as possible. Yeah, and we did the exact same thing too. And even when we were both working, we looked at minimizing our debt, not going into debt, and yeah, it's been, how to save a buck, cutting coupons, getting deals, making lunch at home and all that stuff. So yeah, gotta reduce the expenses as much as you can and try to save for retirement. Terry's back. It says the government ties Social Security raises to the inflation rate. But still, it's not. It's almost like the military. When I was in the military, been through different administrations, left, right. Well, that's the only thing we have is left and right. We don't do third party stuff in the United States, unfortunately. That's Ross Perot was kind of like he was on the verge of being the third party, and then it didn't work out. So that was kind of messed up. But with the two-party system, unfortunately, when we talk about inflation and we talk about cost of living, I remember we would get cost of living increases, but with inflation or the real cost of living didn't match up to that. So we're always like two steps forward, one step forward, three steps back type of thing in the military. Unless the economy was really, really crappy, then we got a pretty decent sized pay raise for the cost of living. But even then, considering all the previous years that we didn't get a proper pay raise, it was just kind of an illusion. It was like, oh, you were doing bad before, but now we're doing really, really bad. So we're going to throw you a bone, and you're like, yay. And then, but when you start doing the numbers, And looking at it, you're like, I'm still behind. Crap. And then you're right, throw in inflation and the Ukraine war that is still going on, which is absolutely insane. But the Ukraine has a lot of natural resources, and that kind of affects everybody. So, yeah, we're still dealing with that, and a lot of other things going on. So, but thankfully, being in Korea, in a real homogenous society, it ends up we're not faced with a lot of problems that other countries face, and which is kind of good. I appreciate that. I like the conservative, polite, respectful, mind your own business type of attitude that Korea has. When you go on a train, there's no yelling and people being loud. It's almost like being in a church going, on a train or public transportation, unless there's foreigners. There's certain foreigners that pop up and it'll just ruin it. Matter of fact, yesterday, took the wife out to a cafe and we ended up having a little brunch thing going on. And we got there, it's nice and quiet, music's playing, we're kind of having a nice conversation. And then next thing you know, there's some foreigners with kids. Kids were acting a fool, yelling and screaming, running, around the cafe. And it's just like, of course, then the parents that were there were raising their voice to be heard as it was a group of people, different kids, different families. And of course, instead of telling their children to quiet down, all the parents did was speak louder over the kids and totally ignore their children. So yeah, it ended up it half of our brunch was good and those people showed up, and it's like, you don't see that from Koreans. Koreans are more respectful, and I would say generally their kids are more well behaved as well. I mean, based on my experiences, and even in the United States, we lived the majority of our lives in I wouldn't say the majority of our lives we lived in the United States, but a lot of it we lived in Korea, in the military. Now we're retired here. But I remember being in coffee shops and restaurants and all of that stuff, fast food or, mid-level dining restaurants. Parents just wouldn't get a handle on their kids, kids yelling, screaming, throwing food. And it's just like, seriously, really? And the parents totally ignore it like it's normal, and they just kind of zone it out. They ignore it, and unfortunately, it's the opposite here in Korea. Thankfully, there's even. I was talking with a guy, and he was talking about, well, is there racism in Korea? And it's like, no, but then again, there's places where foreigners are not allowed. But is that being racist? Initially, I would say yes, because if there's a sign, or you go to a club or nightclub or something like that, and the guy at the front says, no, you can't come in, because you're a foreigner, and it's like you would be, immediately you would think you'd be offended. It's but here in Korea, it's kind of like if you're too old, there are certain places you can't go because you're too old. There's cafes and restaurants that have no children allowed. Is that being racist, or is that ageism? Some places have signs that say no foreigners allowed. So is that being racist? I don't think so. For me, when I was young and stupid, and now I'm just old and stupid, maybe a little less stupid. But it ends up now, if I see a place like that, and even my wife, when she sees a place like that, it says no foreigners. There's actually places that say no Koreans. I kid you not. Here in Korea, there are businesses that say no Koreans allowed. And these are usually located around military bases and stuff like that, because the Koreans go in there, they'll see the high prices that are being way overcharged to, U.S. military personnel and their families. And so they just, no Koreans are allowed in those stores. And it's absolutely crazy. But it's like, even with the Korean clubs or cafes that say, no children, I don't think that's ageism. I don't think it's If they don't want foreigners, I don't think that's racism. I think it's just, it is what it is. You know, they're not going out of their way to, you know, it's not like they're going around in Klan hoods and saying no foreigners, you know, anything like that. No, these races or that races. It's just, it is what it is. And if it doesn't bother me, it doesn't really bother my wife either. And the fact that, you know, well, obviously they're doing okay. The market is going to dictate. And if they're making enough money with what they're doing and how they're doing it, then that's totally fine. But to bring it down to a point of like coffee shops. We've been to coffee shops where foreigners come in or people with children. Mostly it's foreigners and their children, unfortunately. Not so much Korean kids. Korean kids are generally pretty nice and well behaved. But we've gone into cafes that said no children allowed. And that's nice because it ends up, it's like you can have adult conversations. You don't have kids yelling and screaming, even though Korean kids don't yell and scream that much. But there are a few that we've seen that do that. But usually that's taken care of quickly. But it's nice for adults to go out and associate with other adults to get away from children and kids and so on and so they need to decompress. And so I kind of appreciate the cafes and stuff that have those rules. So yeah, it's not really a big thing. CBGB's back says people in the USA let their dogs run wild and terrorize children and the disabled. Ooh, yeah, that's kind of crazy. Here in Korea, you'll see a lot of dogs. People with dogs, usually they're in carriers and, you know, they're on leashes, but they're pretty. I haven't seen a dog not on a leash. And they'll bring their dogs to the malls, into food courts, you know, and all this stuff. You know, in the baby carriages. Those are absolutely crazy. I never get that. Dog will never walk again. But yeah, it's just. You don't see wild packs of dogs, or you don't hear stories of, you know, somebody's dog attacked a child or whatever. I mean, that is super, super, super rare here in Korea. So probably depends on availability of alternatives. If all clubs in an hour radius are no foreigners, it's a problem. If there are 10 clubs and 2 say no foreigners, it's not really an issue. Yeah. And mostly, like around the military bases, you won't see that. Okay. You won't see signs that say no foreigners, because that's how you make your money, is off of the military personnel that frequent those bars and clubs. Usually, it is like bars and clubs and things like that that are far away from the military bases. And I've run into a couple of those during my lifetime and being here in Korea. But it's not really that big of a deal. You know, I remember me and this guy named Colette during his time, and sorry, you know, hope this, you don't, you know, it's no offense to you. And they explained the whole situation. It's like, oh, okay, well, where can we go? Oh, well, try this club over here, go over there, whatever. And, you know, there was really no offense taken to that. And by the way, Colette was a black guy. And so when we were traveling Korea, we would go to places and hit train stations and bus stops. We stopped off in little towns because it's like, hey, it's getting close to dark. We'll get off the train or the bus and we'll just spend the night and whatever and drink. Excuse me, a lot of drinking going on when I was younger. But because of Colette and his race, I remember kids coming up and touching his skin and seeing if it would rub off. You know, it was kind of funny. And of course, I was the white guy, and the same thing. I'd get a little bit of that, but not much. But there was definitely areas where, you know, they hadn't had foreigners in their town in ages. You know, they'd see them on TV, but that would be it. So, you know, but even then, none of those people were racist. You know, the kids weren't racist, they're just curious. And then I found that the older people, and even probably like when we were traveling around, people in the younger people thought we were cool. The middle-aged and older people, the older people thought we were really cool. once they found out that we were in the military, then they're like, feeding us and giving us soju, and oh yeah, Korea, USA number one, Korea number one, never had a bad experience in Korea. So, for that, and there's actual, getting back to the ageism thing, there's actually places that restaurants or whatever say no seniors allowed. And it's like, but that was when you start, initially you're like, oh, okay, that's ageism, that's wrong. How dare you do that to seniors and blah, blah, blah. But the backstory on that is that this restaurant, there was one restaurant in particular, is that old people would go there, they fall down, break a hip or whatever. And so finally there was enough, finally they just say, hey, we can't deal with this, the insurance and so on and so forth. So, with that in mind, it's kind of like, oh, okay, I get it. I get it. So it's not really a big thing these days. I don't know. So, no signal. I'm not sure what you're saying. Expound upon that. Maybe we're not. No, it still says we're live. Anyway, CB, if you can explain that, I haven't had my full latte yet, so. But yeah, that's what we got going on here in Korea. A lot of rain, other stuff going on. Still doing the 3D printing stuff. Oh, it's back. Oh, okay. Good. Let me see. I had a few lags. Yeah. I get that every once in a while. I think we might upgrade our. For the most part, I've been thinking about upgrading our internet, but I think it's good enough for now. I mean, it's pretty fast. So, but I'm also going through a VPN, so that could be a reason for that. But, and somebody asked me about this. So yeah, why not just do this? So speed test. Of course, see how it says Denver, Colorado. I wonder if, no, not that one. I don't want that one. I want back to, what am I doing? I don't even know what's going on. Let's see. Korea speed test. Let's see if I can get this. No, that's not. That's not what I want. But the speed test is actually, the internet speeds that we get here is pretty good. Where was that speed test that I was doing? I can't remember. I get charged plenty by calling banks in the USA. Do you have a solution for that? Oh, yeah. Since we're not going to do the speed testing, man, that's kind of crazy. Do I get charged plenty for calling banks in the USA? Actually, I don't, because I don't have to call banks. And if I do, I just end up using, what is it? There's Tatone, but now I just shoot emails to my banks. There's like instant messaging that you can have on a lot of banks that they end up having on their websites and stuff like that. So, yeah, I really just don't experience that. And maybe part of that is because of the bank that I have, Navy Federal Credit Union. I wasn't able to put in, we opened the account while we were in Hawaii, and then we came to Korea. There's a Navy Federal Credit Union on the military base close by, and online I couldn't put my Korean phone number. Excuse me. But when we actually went to the branch on post, and then they were able to put in our Korean phone number, so we have access that way. But even in the United States, like USAA, they've got toll-free numbers. A lot of banks have toll-free numbers, so you might want to look into that. But yeah, I don't get. Yeah, we've never experienced that. Matter of fact, I'm thinking about canceling our Tatone plan, which is like $4 a year or something like that. You get a permanent phone number. That you have a U.S. phone number, but really, with everything that goes on in online banking, just haven't found the need to call banks or institutions because everything is done online these days. So, yeah, it is what it is. It's just oh, here it is. I think I got here's the internet speed. So we got to download. That's in Tokyo. Download speed is 846, and usually it's kind of like 8 in the high 800s here in Korea, but this test is servers in Tokyo. Upload speed, so we got some pretty decent speeds. Yeah, it's not bad. So CB says, yes, I get charged for calling the toll-free number. Oh, really? Wow. Oh, but you call from a Korean number. That's probably why. So, yeah, Tatone, you can call. They have a free version of Tatone, and I'll show you. Let's take a look at that. Boom, Tatone. There it is. And Tatone mobile data plan starting at $15 a month. So kind of free talk and text app over Wi-Fi or data, no contracts, no fees. Unlimited free texting app. Forget the roaming charges. Burn your number. Free calling beyond a smartphone. So that ends up, yeah, Tatone. So. But honestly, yeah, you can get a free phone number, lets you choose your own U.S. phone number. So we were able to pick, excuse me, like we took a area code 719 for Colorado, free texting, Wi-Fi and cell data calling, no cell minutes required. So that's no roaming fees anywhere. Boom. It's all on Wi-Fi without paying outrageous roaming charges. So that's something. But honestly, I thought I would use this a lot more. And like I said, you can pay to have the permanent number. So if you really need a permanent number for whatever reason, you could do that. I think they up the amounts here, but what's the other one? Free Wi-Fi calling. Do it over Wi-Fi. It's not a big deal. So, download app. Let's click here for more and see what that ends up saying. But yeah, I'm seriously thinking about getting rid of it because I just don't use it anymore. Everything I do is verified by two-factor authentication, and that's not, streaming services in Korea that are the United States instead of just the Korean versions of that. Light Talk, $15 a month. Yeah, the prices have gone up a little bit. So, and I think back in the day, I just ended up paying for a permanent number, and they don't offer that anymore. But I still have the permanent number, and they're still taking out that one charge. But if I change it, it's going to go up to a higher price. So they actually have phones and stuff like that. Oh, that's kind of cool. I didn't know that. So, yeah, they've kind of expanded. But honestly, like I said, I just don't use it anymore. There's no reason to because of the two-factor authentication with banking and everything. So, yeah. So hopefully, anyway, yeah, that'll help you out. Yeah, it's $15 a month for taxes and fees, unlimited talk and text, hotspot 1 gig. So I don't know. It is what it is. But you could also do a search online for that. There's a few other services as well. Um, yeah, amazing how cheap smartphones are these days. Yeah, absolutely crazy. And the things that you can do with it. That's the other outrageous thing. Thinking about this, you can FaceTime, you can instant messaging, you get emails and stuff like that. I was in Korea before all of that stuff, and being in the military, remember I had to go to a Mars station, and a Mars station ended up that it was like a radio station that went through whatever, and you got to make one phone call a month, one 10-minute call a month, but it wasn't dual, like you could talk and listen at the same time. It was, you had to talk, and then you had to wait, and then you had to listen, and there was a huge delay, and then talking was just like a pain in the butt. But letters would take 2 or 3 weeks to get back to the United States. It was like 3, sometimes 4 weeks to get a letter to somebody back in the United States from Korea, and then, it's just crazy stuff. But now it's like FaceTime, boom, immediate. Absolutely crazy. $150 is too much, or $15 a month is too much. Yeah, and like I said, it's most financial institutions and everything. They just do 2-factor authentication, online stuff. Yeah, I'm just getting to the point where I'm probably going to cancel the Tatone, because it's just not. Even though I'm only paying like $4 or $7 a month or whatever for the permanent number. It's not even featured on here anymore. So, yeah. Yeah, fun stuff. So, I don't know. Try it out. Try out the free version and see what happens. I mean, they always got the free version, so that's kind of cool. But with that, that's what we got going on. Today is another workout day, so the wife and I are going to be getting ready probably in about the next 45 minutes. Go to the gym. Today's chest and back day, and good to know. So we're going to do that, and then I think we might hit Costco, maybe. I don't know. It depends on how much rain there is. We've been saying we need to go to Costco. They just opened one up near Pyeongtaek, and of course, as soon as it opened up, there was tons of people going there. People waiting 2 hours to find parking spaces. So it'll definitely be that for now. Yep, enjoy the day. CB says bye for now. So yeah, we will see everybody later. But yeah, we're just going to kind of finish this up, and not much else is going on. Just going to finish up doing some more 3D printing stuff. I'm actually doing some more painting, and just kind of take it easy today in this rainy day here in Korea. So, and finish up my latte. If anybody has any questions about being retired overseas, or you're thinking about retiring in Korea like we did, you have a spouse that has Korean ancestry and you have more questions, what you can end up doing is emailing me at this email address, officialdverylife@gmail.com. Like and subscribe to the channel. That would be the best thing that you could do for me. If you want to do me a solid, you could buy me a coffee, link in the description box. And that's where all of these people down here on the scrolling ticker are the people that bought me coffee. And it ends up, keeps going and going and going and going. And a guy just yesterday donated, bought me a coffee. I think his name was Brian C. There's Terry. Terry's there. Mike H. and Brian C. They bought me coffee, and thank you for being awesome. So with that being said, if you just want to say hi, there's the email. If you got questions, 3D printing, resin, miniature painting, expat stuff, or you just want to say hi, reach out, and I answer every single email. Might take me a couple days, but I will answer. So thank you, everybody, for coming and checking this out and being retired in Korea. It's cool. I enjoy it, and so far we don't have any regrets, even though we have gotten a lot of rain. Once in a century rains that we're getting. Yeah, even despite that, we're still happy and content here in Korea. So we'll let you all go. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next video. Peace. Good. Good stuff. Rain, rain, go away.